Councillor Collins.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. And, as part of this job, we're oftentimes faced with the challenges of dealing with very contentious issues. And I've been here for a number of terms. And I've had the honor and the privilege of serving my constituents for a number of years and having been tested, I would say, politically several times by issues on a very macro level that affect the entire community and maybe not just my ward. And this one that we're dealing with tonight is certainly no different and falls into that category. And, I could point back to Red Hill that was constructed through our ward at the time. As you recall, we were ward mates. Mm-hmm. And it certainly wasn't an easy process to go through because we had a split in our ward. Our constituents were the most affected by it, and I think if we look back, we would say that by and large, the bulk of the opposition came from those wards that bordered the valley, that included our own. And no different for the stadium, certainly, in terms of dealing with that. And, had you polled people at the time, and we didn't have a poll at that time, but had you polled people in the neighborhoods across the city, you would find a very eclectic mix of responses and levels of support for one site or the other, or in some cases no support at all for a stadium. And so certainly not easy to deal with issues along those lines, and I guess you could probably include amalgamation. So LRT falls into that category, and there are certainly no easy answers when it comes to dealing with the LRT project. We're also forced at times to make decisions that on a very micro level or at a ward level, certainly test our political patience, if you want to call it that, in terms of making decisions that where you have a divided community. And I went through that with the beach waterfront trail. As you recall, for members that were here at that time, we had petitions from the beach community that said, there's a portion of them that wanted it, thought it would do good things for the neighborhood and would do good things for the city, and there were a portion of people who were against it. And we're forced to make, under those trying circumstances, very tough decisions, especially when we have a split. As you know, for me, I've criticized this process and certainly the project from the perspective of that no one really came into this term with a mandate to go forward with this project. And hold on. Thanks, you. Dad. My relatives are here.
Thanks, Mom.
Sorry, Gabe.
No disrespect.
So I've been very clear in terms of I still think that putting this to a referendum is the best route to take, because I think we get a clear and concise opportunity to view where the community is. But I know that that's not in the cards in terms of where council sits. We know the interpretation that we received in terms of the 2/3 majority. And I'm certainly willing, as I said from day one, once that was rendered, to live with that decision. Those are procedural rules, and I certainly don't discount it. And I didn't take part in the poll that was conducted recently, and I know there's been a lot of criticisms and a lot of support for the poll, depending on what side of the equation you're on, in terms of whether or not it was an accurate poll. I don't dispute the fact that the poll that was taken was a very accurate one. It's a national firm that's done polling in other areas. I think we would all agree that polling to some extent has been called into question of late in terms of what we've seen with our own elections here in Canada and Ontario, and certainly those that have occurred in the U.S. Of late. But I think what the poll confirms, and anyone who has lived through the last, I would say through the last election up until today, I think what the poll confirms, and the correspondences that we receive and the phone calls we receive, and we've all informally met over the last number of weeks, what it confirms is that we have a divided and split community. And that's never a good thing. I think it's important that we've certainly heightened the level of civic engagement related to this project. It's not often that for GIC meetings or committee meetings or council meetings that we have a full audience in attendance following what's happening at City Hall. And it's certainly been problematic for the province and the feds and even municipal levels for us to get people engaged. So irrespective of where you sit in terms of the LRT, whether you're for or against it, I think it's been a victory in a sense, for as much as it's caused some great grief for many of us in terms of the emails, the calls, and the delegation. Certainly, we had very long meetings. I think it's been a great victory for all of us that we have heightened the level of municipal civic engagement in our building here at City Hall over the last number of years on this issue. So no winners and no losers in that regard. I think the fact that we have people talking about how important issues are to their community, whether it's their own street, their neighborhood, or the city as a whole, I think we've done well in that regard. And I know we've been criticized of late in terms of not making decisions. We've made decisions all along, and we'll continue to make decisions. And those criticisms are certainly valid, I think, maybe in some quarters, but I would say that the fact that we have people here today helping us along the way is a good thing. I want to thank certainly those people who've come out to the rally. I didn't attend the rally. I want to thank people who've come out pro and con here to the meetings that we've had in terms of delegations. And we've been inundated with phone calls. We've been inundated with emails. And, you know, all of us are in the community in our personal lives. And so whether you're getting your hair cut, you're going to the grocery store, or whether you're picking up your dry cleaning, you're not escaping this issue anywhere. Unless you're sitting in your basement watching TV and your family's not talking about it, you're hearing about LRT everywhere, for good or bad. But at the end of the day, we have a split community and we have a split council. And it has an effect on all of us as individuals. And I think lost in much of what's gone on, and I think Andrew referenced this a little bit in his column recently, and I've had a conversation, more than one, with every single person around this table in terms of what's gone on over the last year and a half. And it is a very trying and taxing experience on us all as individuals. And again, irrespective of your position, people are losing sleep over it. People aren't eating over it. You know, I can hear somebody playing violins, I'm certain, in the background here in terms of, well, poor them. But we asked for this job. We signed up for it. And we're forced to make these tough decisions. But I know that this has been a very trying and taxing experience on all of us. And so I'm certainly cognizant of wherever this goes between now and the provincial election and between now and our next election, that it is taking a toll on my council colleagues, all of whom I consider friends. And I say that in the greatest of respect to everyone around the table. And it's not often that we can get unanimity around this table. I don't expect unanimity. No one in the community expects us to be Stepford councillors where we all just get in line once an issue comes up. And I respect the fact that everyone has the ability through these discussions and the right to disagree and to criticize, constructively criticize issues that are in front of us. I've noticed with that split community and that split council that the emotions run high during our debates, and we sometimes lose, you know, the decorum that we often look for when it comes to making decisions. We noticed that at our last meeting, where things get emotional. And things, again, people get tired after marathon meetings, and things can get out of control. It doesn't help us through the decision-making process. And I'm sorry for going on, Mr. Mayor. I'm traditionally don't speak very long, but I just want to get this off my chest.
This is the time that everyone gets to speak whatever they want to say.
I appreciate that.
I appreciate it.
And so I know that our emotions run high, and I know that things get testy, and that affects the relationship we have between each other, and it affects committee work. And I've been in committees where, you know, people have said, well, I'm not supporting that initiative, unrelated to LRT, and I'm not supporting that that project, and I'm not supporting that policy because he or she is on the other side of this issue. And that doesn't help us at all. Again, irrespective of what side of the equation you're on, it doesn't help us move issues forward. Thankfully, you've all been kind enough. You haven't applied that to me yet, but it's just a matter of time, I'm certain. And so, you know, we've been through marathon meetings. We had an issue last marathon meeting, and we had one 2 meetings ago. my best friend here was ready to knock my block off. And at 11 o'clock at night, I was trying to think of someone bigger than him who I could call down here to help me in a situation where I thought I needed.
Would not have helped.
We've got your back.
I couldn't think of anyone who was bigger than
We've
him.
got your back.
So I say that, it's sort of tongue-in-cheek, but, this has become a very personal issue for all of us. And because we have split wards, and again, back to that poll, you can dispute the findings of the poll, but we all recognize that the community is split. I don't care what area of the city you represent, whether you want to say that it's a 60-40 split, whether you want to say it's 65-35, whether you want to say it's 50-50, every area of this community has almost a different opinion, neighborhood by neighborhood, street by street, house by house. And so that certainly doesn't make the decision-making process any easier. And for as much as we're elected as individuals to this table, when we arrive at City Hall, the community expects that we're going to act as a team. And right now, to be very blunt, we have a divided locker room. And there's a lot of furrowed brows that where our eyes are cast to the coach, and we're not happy about the situation. And I can say with great confidence that our council works best when we act as a team. And I can give, thank you for that, Mark, and I can give you a number of examples when we come together as a group, we find ways to accomplish great things in our community. And that would apply to, I would say, the last 5 or 6 budgets that we've passed. We've passed some of the lowest tax increases in the province, and because of that, we're a more affordable city and we're more competitive for it. We are on the verge tonight of passing our housing strategy, which will help hundreds, if not thousands, of people in this community, and I think goes beyond where the feds and the province are. We have resolved round 1 of area rating. We have resolved our waste issues. And I just say that in the context of the fact that we have done tremendous things when we act as a group. And many of those items I just rhymed off, we were unanimous. I mean, we were collectively around the table, every single person bought into the fact that on those issues, we were doing good things. But I come back to the split. And for me, the problem with the project where we sit right now is that this political pendulum that is the LRT keeps swinging wildly back and forth. And so think back to the election. I think we probably still had a split community. There were 3 mayoral candidates that had different opinions. We went through that. We all took opinions, went to the door-to-door. The announcement came, and then there were opinions that were provided at that point in time. And then there have been steps, baby steps through the process to get us to where we are today. And this issue has swung back and forth. And if I was to, we all know where we were last Wednesday. I mean, we went from starting at the announcement with vast majority of support for this project, although we maybe hadn't checked in with council. It didn't seem like anything was awry with moving forward with this. Get us to last week, and had we voted on this last Wednesday, and I know there were critics that we didn't make a decision, this project would have failed 9-6. We all know where the votes were. So had we at 11 o'clock decided not to punt this to council, this project would have lost, and we'd be sitting here tonight with a negative recommendation in front of us, and we'd be scrambling to understand where we go next. Does the delay of the EA mean that this project is alive but on life support? Does the defeat of the EA at GIC mean that we are now searching for a plan B, as I think many people were talking about, or something different? And so, for me, when the political pendulum swings wildly, we run into problems. We run into problems in terms of how we operate. We run into problems in terms of just general governance. And if I point to Toronto as an example, where we watched the political pendulum swing from side to side, Mayor Miller to Rob Ford. Look at what happened in the United States. Barack Obama to Donald Trump. And so for me, when those things happen, and that's happening right now with us, it's problematic. There are issues attached to that. There are short, medium, and long-term issues that come about as a result of that. And no one benefits. And we see wild swings in policy, we see wild swings in decisions, and I think you and others have characterized it in the media of late that, you know, this project's on life support, we're doing everything we can to keep it going forward, and we have a group in the community who'd like to see something different. And so that's problematic. So as I look forward, in terms of where we're going next, I see that political pendulum still swinging wildly. And whether it was going to pass last week in terms of being defeated 9-6, or whether tonight, as some people would guess, it might be supported 9-6 or 8-7, we still see the project in a very precarious position. And if that project is defeated, whether it's now or next June, we see certainly residents who are supporting it ramping up the discussion and trying to find ways and means in which to bring it back. We find people involved in the provincial process trying to make it a provincial issue, which it most certainly will be, trying to find ways and means in which to affect the decision-making process. No one anticipates Premier Wynne being our next Premier. So it boils down to Mr. Brown and certainly Ms. Horvath. I mean, stranger things have happened in politics, but you know, if I was a betting man, I would suggest that someone else is going to be Premier. And so that show, whatever that show looks like between now and then, makes that political pendulum here at the civic level, municipal level, swing all that much more wildly. And everyone waits all the while for that sort of that Oscar announcement, that moment where they open the envelope and say, what is the cost of this project? What is the capital cost? What are the operating costs? What are some of the issues and answers that we're looking for? And that's kind of where we're left guessing right now. And all the while, between now and then, the front page of the newspaper looks less like a daily and more like a cover of Mad Magazine. And we've seen that between the announcement and today. We've seen that in the last week. No one's talking about anything else, even though there are other things going on. No one's talking about anything else except for LRT. So I'm interested certainly in, my style has been here to sort of build things up rather than take them down. And I say that in the context of, you know, we're all here to try to solve problems, and irrespective of where you the issue with LRT, we all want this community to benefit. And we can all talk about ways and means in which to get there, whether it's LRT, whether it's BRT, whether it's investment in our infrastructure. Our Rapid Ready plan that we all supported, I think if there's anything where we have unanimous support around this table right now, is that we all supported Rapid Ready, that we all wanted to improve transit, and we wanted to see good things come from transit investments. We're passing a federal investment tonight for transit, and hopefully that will go a long way to help us. Our Rapid Ready plan, Mr. Mayor, as you know, will require significant investments from around this table. And it won't happen with an 8-7 council. It won't happen with a 9-6 council. You know, insert Councillor Pasuti here, whatever his vote is, add a digit one way or the other, and we fail. And I would say that this project doesn't continue much further beyond 218 if we don't resolve area rating for transit. That's a given, irrespective of what side of the debate you're on. And I know we're holding it off, and there are strategic reasons to do that, but that doesn't resolve itself with the split that we have on council or the split in the community. People will ramp it up one way or the other that we're paying too much, and we're not going to get through this. And I don't think, having been here as long as I have been, that there's any way that we resolve that issue with a split council. It just doesn't happen. We resolved round one unanimously. This time not going to happen in the context of everything else that's happening us around with LRT. And I want to be very constructively critical of some of the comments that have been made lately as it relates to cost. This is not a cost-neutral initiative. Again, irrespective of whether you support this or not, there are immediate costs that come with LRT. And we will collectively, whether it's us in 218 or other people sitting around this table in 19 and beyond, we will not be able to resolve the cost pressures that will come with this project or BRT if someone has, if someone thinks that we have support for BRT. We will not be able to resolve those issues without majority support and consensus around this table. And I would say right now, back to the split, that we don't have that. And we're nowhere near being in a position to resolve that issue. We also know what's coming, again, and I'm getting to the finish line here. We also know what's coming that has come with other issues, other LRT projects, other transit projects. Construction process will bring lawsuits. We know that. That's happened in Toronto, happened in KW, it's going to happen here. We know that there will be special requests from BIAs. I've heard informally from some of my council colleagues there will be special consideration or requests coming from BIAs in terms of providing help, and businesses associations who are looking for some assistance through the construction process. They're going to lose revenues as it relates to the parking sharing agreement that we have. And we know that residents are going to be displaced in every ward. We won't be able to deal with those projects and those pressures unless we have the majority of support on council. And we won't be able to do that 9 to 6. We won't be able to do that 8 to 7. It'll take much more than that. And so what I'm saying here tonight, Mr. Mayor, is that, and I haven't discussed this certainly with anyone around the table, that I'm willing to work with people to get us through these issues. Once the EA passes tonight, we're going to be in a position where we're going to spend probably $70 to $80 million. There's no turning back at that point in time. There's no turning back. I don't care what you think is going to happen when the envelope's opened. I don't care what, if it was 1%, 2% on the tax roll, if it comes in $100 million over budget. Once we purchase $70 to $80 million worth of properties and we have all those costs under our belt, there is no turning back. And so I'm in the position where I would like to, with all the other issues that I raised earlier, I'm willing to work with council on this issue. I'm willing to, instead of, I think the politically populist thing to do would be to continue to throw tomatoes at it. I still believe the vast majority of people in this community are against this project, in every ward. And people can try to suggest otherwise. That's the case. And but I think the only way that this project moves forward without being a gong show and without affecting every other major issue we're going to deal with between now and 2018, forget about what comes after, because no one knows who's going to be around this table. The only way to deal with that is that if people are trying to find ways and means in which to resolve problems associated with it. So I can work with my businesses on Queenston Road. I know that my businesses, there's not one that supports this project, to be clear. They're all culture-centered drive-thrus and grocery stores and banks and other types of operations that rely on people getting in and out with cars. I think what I would need to hear through this process over the next couple of months is that there's a willingness to provide the same flexibility with Queenston businesses as we did with James Street North, in terms of the turning restrictions, in terms of some of the problems associated with the access issues. I think that we are all swimming against the stream when we deal with the residential community. But I think, again, by and large, when this passes tonight, we're at the point of no return. And I know where the votes are right now. And we can continue to hope for the Hail Mary from the province. They're not changing their mind. And we continue to hope that Patrick Brown's elected, he's going to provide us a check. Those political promises might be made at some point in time. Whether they're delivered on, I don't know if that's the case. So I'm certainly willing to, as I have in the past, work with my colleagues on this issue. I think it's important, and we can't discount the fact that there are people who want to continue to oppose this, and I respect that, and I still believe that there are better options and alternatives on the table than the one that we have in front of us. But where we are in the process, I'm willing to work with my colleagues as I have on bigger issues in the past. And we need people like Councillor Conley and certainly Councillor Pearson. They know where Stony Creek's at. And Councillor Conley has that tell it like it is style and has a lot of business experience. Councillor Pearson, someone who takes transit all the time, has represented her area for a long time. We need people like our Stony Creek councillors to help us with these issues, and there are going to be a lot of them. And I look at Councillor Johnson and all the good things that she does with her area, and she knows where the community is on this. It's not an easy decision. And I've never criticized, to be clear, just to make it clear, I've never criticized anyone on the other side for taking the position they have. I've always been critical of the issue. And so I don't discount any of the issues and the support that my colleagues to the left of me, the gentleman here to the left of me, provide because they're representing their constituents. Councillor Ferguson and I certainly are almost always on the same page when it comes to financial stuff. And I'm not going to make my way around the table because it'll take much longer than I've already been given the latitude and flexibility to say what I had to say. But I think almost to a person, I can point to everyone and say that they have something to offer in terms of moving this forward. If we don't move it forward, and I want to talk about June very quickly. If we're in the same position in June, this is a bigger gong show than it is right now. Because we're going to have provincial candidates in the mix, we'll have municipal candidates in the mix, and we'll most likely have some information in hand that makes us feel uncomfortable once that bid process makes its way across the finish line. So all I'm asking is that my colleagues, again, irrespective of how you came into the meeting tonight, keep an open mind in terms of where they're going, how we move this project forward. I'm not going to stop being critical of it, but I want to help with the process in terms of the budget. I want to help in terms of all the things that are on the horizon. And it's not an easy decision. Irrespective of how any of us vote tonight, we have half of our ward, give or take some, who are not going to be happy with the decision. But I think it's incumbent upon us to try to make the best of, depending on how you look at it, a bad situation, and try to make it right so that no one's disadvantaged through this process. So I will be supporting the EA tonight.
Thank you. Okay, folks, thank you very much. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Ferguson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And boy, what a difference a week makes. And I don't intend to